All right, YouTube, I hate to weigh in on pop culture nonsense because I don't really like pop culture. I don't watch TV, generally speaking. I don't really keep up to date with celebrities and gossip and all that stuff. I see it as a waste of time. But I thought I'd weigh in on the Duck Fuck Dynasty controversy because everyone's talking about it. They don't care about the NSA spying on everyone. They don't care about the gay marriage issue. All they care about here is this bearded duck hunting dude who goes on, gives an interview, and says something perceived as homophobic. My thoughts on this are twofold. First is that this is not a constitutional issue, and on this, I'm ironically saying the same thing as Bill O'Reilly, of all people, who himself admitted that this has nothing to do with the Constitution because A&E is not a part of the government. On the one hand, A&E has every right to get rid of him, keep him off the show, cancel his contract based on what he says, either on the show or off the show. It's at will employment. They have no legal responsibility to keep him there. They have no moral responsibility to keep him there. It doesn't matter how many fans are outraged, which it makes no sense to be outraged about a fucking actor on TV. It doesn't matter. It's A&E's decision. That's final. Has nothing to do with any legal repercussions whatsoever. They can fire anybody that they want. Not sure about contractual obligations. Maybe they have to pay him a little bit to get him to leave or whatever, but that'd be worked out in the end. But here's the other thing. I don't think that individuals, no matter how bad what they say is, should be removed from the public square and from public dialogue based on their opinions. I say this as someone who completely supports gay marriage, as in fully. I think it should be federally legal. I think it's about due for time where the Supreme Court weighs in on it. I can see some virtue with letting the states deal with it because if the Supreme Court does it, then people have lingering resentment like they do with Roe v. Wade. But I think it's about time that people be treated equally. However, I don't believe in any form of censorship. And businesses, because a few broadcast networks control such a large proportion of the television media, it can be difficult for people with unpopular opinions to go on there and get any airtime. And I feel the same way. Listen, I'm heavily anti-theistic against Abrahamic religion. I don't like Christianity, I don't like Judaism, and I don't like Islam. I don't have a problem with the more liberal groups, the Episcopals or whatever, or the Shiites, some of them. But generally speaking, I oppose these religious groups because I see them as filled with hate and bigotry and so forth and causing all sorts of problems. On most networks, I would not be able to air my opinions. I would get kicked off because it's an unpopular opinion. Most people in this country remain in some form of religion, mostly Abrahamic religion. Clearly, if I were to go onto a show, if I were an actor or whatever, or I were giving an interview and I said any of these things, it would cause outrage. There would be a subset of the population that would agree with me and think it was cool, and most of the people would either not care or they would be against it, clearly. And the majority of the population now supports gay marriage in most states and in the country at large. So this is an example of an unpopular opinion. And it's clear that A&E is trying to get rid of him because they don't want people to leave their network. Now, here's another thing. People have pointed out, well, the kind of people that watch Duck Dynasty, they don't care about gays. I mean, it's a show about rednecks who go duck hunting. So most people that find that entertaining probably also like things like NASCAR and Honey Boo Boo and going to church. However, A&E is not just Duck Dynasty. They've got a bunch of other shows that they air. This happens to be the most popular show they do air, but they've got a large number of other popular shows on their network with their own audience. I mean, it's like if a network were airing Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, and someone came out and said, well, those terrible heterosexuals, they're all degenerates or something, they'd probably kick them off too, because it would be unpopular. So on the one hand, I'm almost have to defend the guy because I don't think that a broadcast network should really be censoring people for what they say off air. But on the other hand, it is clearly A&E's choice. And I find his comments morally repugnant, strange, bizarre, backwards in every possible sense of the term, but I think he still has a right to say them. And listen, here's another thing people don't seem to understand. The kind of people that like Duck Dynasty and are outraged that he's being kicked off the show, probably if they took a look at my channel, their line there is, well, it's not constitutional, he has freedom of speech, he should be able to say what he wants. If they came to my channel and saw my material, they wish that I could get kicked off YouTube. They would be the kind of folks that would think I should be censored. Likewise, people who enjoy the kind of material I make probably do wish he'd get kicked off the air because they're partisans. Myself, as a libertarian, I don't really care what anyone's specific opinion is. Yes, it's A&E's right to can him. Yes, it's also people's right to be outraged or support the decision. Ultimately, though, it simply boils down to this. His comments were unpopular, out of line, backwards, they made no sense. Fewer and fewer people agree with that sort of sentiment, and A&E made a fiscal business decision. It has nothing to do with his First Amendment rights. He's free to say that all he wants. The only sticking point I have is that he didn't say this on the show. He said it in a private interview. It does seem a little bit strange that they would can him for that, and you know, the uproar caused about it, which was primarily generated by their decision to kick him off rather than his actual comments themselves, because let's face it, most people that Google Duck Dynasty before this controversy arose probably liked the show or were curious about watching it. His comments would have been swept under a rug fairly easily if they hadn't decided to kick him off. So yeah, he's backwoods, he's backwards, he has no clue what he's talking about. Maybe he's showing signs of dementia for all I know, but he has the right to say them anyway. I don't understand. Here's the thing. Political correctness, being politically correct, it needs to go. It needs to end. I don't care what opinions a person has, whether they can be a Nazi, they can be a hardcore evangelical homophobe, they can be an anti-theist and be completely against the church, they can say whatever they want, they can have any opinions under the sun, whether they're popular or unpopular, communist, nationalist, Democrat, Republican, the Black Power movement, Ku Klux Klan, it doesn't matter to me one bit. I think that generally speaking, the public eventually weeds through the opinions that make no sense. And this has been put into warp speed by the internet, by the way, because the internet is a great combat arena for people's vying opinions. I think the public, generally speaking, if it's not prompted by the media and by its propaganda, generally decides on what makes sense versus what doesn't make sense, what works versus what doesn't work. And it's primarily propaganda and partisanship that prevents that from happening. If you eliminated that from the equation, we'd be 100 years ahead of where we are right now. I think that unpopular opinions, specifically people who are bigoted in any way, shape, or form, they're losing power. They have for decades now. There's really no reason to take somebody off the air for being a homophobe when every time they open their mouth and say something homophobic, the only people who are agreeing with them and who like what they're saying are people who are deeply, deeply homophobic already. They're mostly beyond help. You're not going to suddenly magically convince them just by taking homophobic people off the air that yes, gay is okay. You're not going to do that. That's like saying that you can convince gay people to give up the gay lifestyle and become straight by continuously browbeating them with a bunch of anti-gay propaganda. It never worked in the past. It was tried by the evangelicals for decades. It didn't work. So taking him off the air, you're taking one homophobic person off the air, you're giving a huge amount of artillery to homophobic individuals because now they can complain and say, we're a fallen nation, censorship, First Amendment gone to shit, the gay lobby, the liberals, they can complain about all these things, and to their fans, to even people on the periphery who kind of half-heartedly support them, it looks like they're right, because they're mainly getting their news from those same homophobic, bigoted groups. Just like if they were to take somebody off the air because they were too atheistic or something. The atheists would jump right down their throats. And people who are on the fence, who listen to both sides, would see that as an affront. People, generally speaking, don't like authority. They're willing to deal with authority. They're willing to support authority when it makes sense. But generally speaking, people are cosmic rebels. Satanism has pointed this out for many years. Generally speaking, people are going to side with the little dog, with the underdog, over the big dog, over the one that's more likely to win, at least temporarily. And so the balance of power shifts. And it goes back and forth forever. These homophobic comments, yes, they're objectionable. They make no sense and they're ignorant. The best way to combat homophobia is to put that on display and let it continue and let that same stereotype, these are duck hunter people with a lot of guns riding jeeps out in the swamps. Nothing could be a more perfect stereotype for atheists and for gay activists to use to show the ignorance of Bible thumpers than to show these bearded, mud-smeared men out in the wilderness in flannel shirts shooting at ducks and spouting off about Jesus. So they've essentially just shot themselves in the foot. And you see, there are some people who don't like what he said, who are basically saying it doesn't really make sense to remove him. Jon Stewart even made a similar comment, and Bill O'Reilly, oddly, is on the other side. Bill O'Reilly, of course, about a year ago said the gay marriage issue is now a moot point. The war has been lost by the evangelicals, and it will eventually be federally legal. I happen to agree with him there. But really, I mean, I don't care if somebody's a homophobic bigot. It's still their right to be. They have every right to scream on the corner of the street. They might get arrested for disorderly conduct, but they can do that. I don't really care. You go on TV, you'll find 7 or 8 evangelical stations, purely Christian stations, and they dwell on the topic constantly. So what? We're going to suddenly start censoring them too? What if there was an atheist network? What if atheism becomes large enough to have a TV network? And they have a bunch of people talking about how stupid Christians are. Are you going to crack down on them too? It makes no sense to do so. Let everyone's opinions compete in the public square, online, on TV, everywhere else. Because, you know, gay activists and atheists and all these groups don't need the government's help. They don't need the help of A&E. They don't need the help of anyone because they're winning. Despite the fact that they are an overwhelmingly small proportion of the population, a severe minority, they are winning the public debate because they are right. Those that are wrong can outnumber them 10 to 1. It makes no difference. Gay rights will be federally recognized very soon. I predict within the next decade it'll be legal in all 50 states. Plus probably Puerto Rico, maybe. I don't know how the law would apply to them as an overseas territory. I don't know. Costa Rica or whatever, the U.S. Virgin Islands. Maybe they already have it legal, I don't know. I believe that the evangelicals and all of these other groups are losing. They're losing because their views are wrong. They're losing because their views are inferior. All you have to do is point it out. It's simple logic, and people are, the education system's falling apart, but people, philosophically speaking, are becoming a little more logical. They're starting to turn against their religious masters. They're seeing the church for what it is, which is a bunch of money-grubbing assholes, a bunch of bastards. Some of these people are child molesters. A lot of these people are hypocrites. Look at Ted Haggard. Ted Haggard spent decades railing against gays, railing against prostitution, railing against drug use. Guess what? It was found that he was paying a male masseuse, to have sex with him while smoking meth. This is the kind of genius that we're having to fight. It's not a very difficult fight, really. I'm a YouTuber. I'm not a reverend or a therapist or anyone of specific importance. I simply put my material out there, and yet hundreds and hundreds of people have left Judeo-Christianity because of my efforts. I'm just one person with a YouTube channel. Just think of what all these activists that organize marches and put up flyers and do all of this real-life stuff, just imagine what they accomplish. And all of these various activists all over the country and all over the world. Just think of what they're accomplishing. Because they're right. Because Christianity, at least the bigoted, evangelical, hardcore movements within Christianity, are purely wrong. And I pointed out to these people on the CNN story about gay marriage in Utah. I said, well, it's against the Christian lifestyle. I said, there are at least 2 major Christian churches that already accept gay marriage and have already married gays. The Episcopals, which are basically Catholic light, and the Unitarians. They already marry gay people. They're Christian groups. And they said, well, though, and the running line is, of course, well, they're not real Christian groups because they disagree with our stance on gay marriage. I asked them to point out where in the Bible Jesus talks about homosexuals. And they can't find a verse because it's not there. Then they go back to Leviticus and say, oh, well, it says so in the Old Testament. I say, but you people always tell me the Old Testament is outdated and doesn't apply to Christians, other than the 10 Commandments. What, this is the 11th commandment? And then I tell them if you actually translate it accurately, it's talking about pederasty. It's talking about an older man fucking a little boy. It's not talking about sodomy between consenting adults. Then they say, well, Paul said something about it. And I ask them, why the hell should anyone listen to Paul? Because his own views were directly contradictory to Jesus, and they don't seem to understand that. They say, well, the Bible can't be changed because it says so in Revelation. Then you point out, at the time, Revelation was talking about Revelation because it hadn't been compiled in the rest of the Bible. And you can run them around in circles and circles and circles. You just have to know a little bit of history and a little bit of psychology, sociology, and very elementary Greek or Hebrew, and you can run these people directly into the ground. This is why I've succeeded. This is why other people succeed when they fight against Christianity and bigotry. I don't care if gays get married. I also don't care if some crazy little bearded man with a rifle goes on TV and gives an interview about how much he hates gay people because the Lord condemns them. Because even most Christians now don't care. Bill O'Reilly, who's one of the furthest right people on all of TV and one of the most popular people in the news, doesn't care anymore. He hasn't mentioned it other than a year ago to say that the war has been lost and it will soon be federally legal. Understand this, folks. You've lost the battle already. So shut up about it. Notice, Utah doesn't even seem to be fighting the judge's decision. This is Utah, the most red state in the union, the most heavily, I think, either the first or second most heavily Republican state, and either the first or second most religious state, isn't even fighting the federal judge presiding over their district when he says that it's unconstitutional to ban gay marriage. See, I can get fired up about this issue. I don't care about Duck Dynasty. I've never watched it and I never will. It looks completely boring to me. Let him say what he wants. In fact, A&E should give him an hour special just to talk about homosexuality. Because by the time he's through, when he's red in the face and his beard is dripping with sweat, he'll have said nothing that others haven't already said. He'll have come up with not one original line, and more people will be assured in their faith that gay marriage is a good thing than before he started talking. This is the importance of letting the bigots have enough rope to hang themselves. It's been done before. All you have to do is let these people prattle on. Don't censor them, leave them alone. In some cases, you don't even need to debate them because they say such goofy things that they literally screw up their own arguments. And then they contradict themselves trying to reconcile their arguments with the Bible or the Constitution or any of these other documents that don't really say anything about gays. So let them have the rope to hang themselves. Let Phil, or whatever his name is, the bearded dude, he looks a lot like Dent Myers, the picture usually used for the satanic racist soundboard prank calls, let him speak. Let him be a goofball. People look at this show, probably a lot of people watching this show sit there chuckling at how dumb these people are. They're not even watching it because they agree with it or because they applaud this particular hunting and trapping and dirt biking lifestyle. They're watching it because it's entertaining. It's entertaining because these people are a throwback to the 1920s. That's why they watch it. And the fans are outraged because they miss Honey Boo Boo and they wanted some other redneck to watch. So let them have what they want. Just the same as you had Queer Eye. You know, people who are gay or who like the gay lifestyle probably generally approved of that show and probably don't watch Duck Dynasty. Well, we had Queer Eye. Let's let them have Duck Dynasty. And again, give them enough rope to hang themselves. And as the series goes out of use and gets more and more boring because they've done the same thing over and over every episode, people will get tired of seeing Jesus get praised at the end of every episode, just like they get tired of Honey Boo Boo dancing, just as they get tired of everything that's on TV. They'll even get tired of Walking Dead someday, and Walking Dead's one of the best series that's ever been made in the history of mankind, if you ask my humble opinion. Seriously, though, the dude's a doofus. Let him speak. Let him keep being dumb, please. As someone who supports gay marriage, there's nothing more important than the mass public being exposed to the completely retarded arguments that are given by homophobes, especially those with long beards who fit the exact stereotype of a homophobic bigot. Peace out.